You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is January 26, 2021, and we've got Sysco Murdoch and Jared Murphy on the show today. Jared is with us now, but Sysco is a podcaster with Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast, and I want to talk to her today about ghosts. And I asked Jared to join us because I also want to talk about ancient technology ghosts, I guess, if that's a word. Jared, you there? How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Of course, it's going to be a good time, I think, because this is just one of those subjects that's going to be a good blend. You know, we're pulling them all together finally. It just paranormal, ghosts, ancient, lost, high technology. It's all related. We're just coming at it from different experiences.
It is all related. I really think that, but I'm kind of curious as to why we're not seeing very many ghosts from the old ancient days. You know, why if there were these old civilizations, we're not seeing these ghosts? And maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I don't know. We'll get Sysco on and we'll talk about it. And Jared, you want to tell everybody real quick where to find you before we go to break and get our guest on?
Yeah, I'm at notaliens.com. You can find my book there. You can find member area and interviews, but you can also get a signed copy of the book that I will actually put in the mail and send to you. If you're out of country, send me an email. It costs a little more to do that, but I have books available, of course, on Amazon. You can certainly, for a few dollars less, go to Amazon and pick up It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us.
All right, awesome. And we have all the links for Jared and Sysco Murdoch and Journey Through the Gate Paranormal podcast in the description down below. We'll be right back with Sysco Murdoch right after this. And welcome back to Conflict Radio. We've got Sysco Murdoch from Journey Through the Gate Paranormal podcast with us tonight, and Jared is also with us. Sysco, how you doing today?
I'm fine, babe. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. You know, it's great to have you on, and we had you on last time. We were talking about ghosts, and I wanted to get you on again because I wanted Jared to join us, and I wanted to talk about an aspect of ghosts that nobody really talks about that I'm kind of curious about, and that's the fact that all of the ghosts that we see nowadays are all like 1800s ghosts. We don't have any ghosts from ancient history. You know, we don't have ghosts showing up in, I guess, togas, like Roman togas, like it's a toga party. We don't see any of that, and I'm wondering why that is. And let's start there.
Wow. Okay. Let me get my black book out, and we'll open it up to that chapter. Well, this is the thing. I'm best talking about stuff that I've seen with my own two eyes, you know, like my stories and things that's happened to me. But however, you know, having my own podcast for a long time and being in this for a long time and searching for answers, which I'm still searching for. Again, like I've always said, I'm not an expert. I've just been doing this. I've said 45 years, but it's probably closer to like 47 now. And I mean, seeking answers, you know, not paranormal investigating, because I wasn't, you know, like 8 years old running around with a recorder and stuff. But things happen, and when things happen like that, you search for explanation. And I was always inquisitive like that. So that being said, the very first, you know, full apparition or a partial apparition or experience I had like that was with an older ghost. Now, that was a Revolutionary War ghost in New Jersey. And those listeners that don't, you know history of America or in New Jersey, the Revolutionary War came all through here in Pennsylvania and all over and up to New York. And so that was my older ghost. But I've heard other stories from other people, very profound stories of a good friend of mine, somebody I hold in very high esteem, is a medium. And when you say medium, think of it like a bridge A lot of people don't understand what's the difference between a psychic medium and a a channeler and things like that. We all have gifts, I believe. Your intuition, your gut feeling, that's a gift. We tend to put things in all these labels and try to understand and fit them in these files. But when you're in this subject, I often find that one file will bleed into the next, or we think we have it, and then something else will happen to change that and flip it a little bit. So open-mindedly, if you think of a medium as a bridge between themselves and another dimension or another plane or the dead, wherever they're talking to you from or coming from, if they're earthbound, they're somewhere near you, whether it's in another plane or not, we don't know. Another dimension, we don't know. But he decided, and I'd say with all the people that I've met, he's got to be in the top 10 of just full-on gift and discern a bit, the way he discerns information and the emotions. He takes everything in at once. It's not just that he's hearing or seeing them, he's feeling them, and if they walk through them or allow him to see, he sees everything that is most profoundly in their energy at the time. It could be the time of their death. It could be a time of deep regret or emotional thing for that essence of human being. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Jared, let me ask you, I guess we really haven't talked about this at all. Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, when I was young, I've definitely had some things myself that I thought were peculiar. So I would not say that prior to the research I've done now, I would say a simple yes. I think there's ghosts, or there's definitely something to all of it. And then in my research and in my book, I know we talked genetic memory, and I know I've joked about the idea in It's Not Aliens, Worse It's Us, the idea of, okay, you constantly remember your past life as Cleopatra. You're never Bill the crap picker upper at the ancient Roman zoo. And that's, I think, a fallacy, because there are many people who do, like Barbara Charlton, people who do EFT work, or people who do outside. It's really difficult for people who've had traumatic UFO experiences or paranormal experiences to get therapy. They're told they're crazy, or they're told it's not real. It's totally different to work someone through an actual experience if you know those things are real. And having a therapist that works with that are often outside of the box. So how that all relates is that I think the idea of genetic memory, a collective human consciousness, and I've described banging on the blinky box because I really do think we're like the Graham Hancock statement of, we're a species with amnesia, or at operating at 10 to 14% consciousness. I think we experience things and we say, well, this is paranormal, or this is a ghost. And I think in reality that we are very complex creatures that have dormant abilities that we're reawakening, and in different people, depending on your gene expression, depending on how you eat, how you meditate, your consciousness, the reality is that you're tapping into a collective consciousness and stored genetic memory. And I don't just mean everything that's ever happened in the past. I mean, I have a solid working theory, and I know we talked about it with Olaf Phillips, my publisher, and at the same time, the belief that there is a collective human consciousness that is almost a backup to every human experience or every human existence, and that there isn't any junk code. Like, we're very primitive in our approach to genes, and we go, oh, we got 6,000 or 8,000 junk things. I'm like, really? We barely know how to work a human heart or brain. And the reality is that these experiences, these manifestations that we see that are either ghosts or prior periods of time or future periods of time, I think these are manifestations of dormant abilities that if we were more conscious again, if we were awakening, for the people who are at the higher end that are either through, whether or not I approve or disapprove, it's not the point, but drug, or like ayahuasca, the peyote thing, where you're stepping into that not just an altered consciousness, but a higher or a collective consciousness. I think those are windows, sightings, people who just are naturally vortexes for, I'm just going to call it vortexes. There are some people who are just naturally more magnetic even towards attracting these either entities or anomalies or ghosts or paranormal experiences. I think there are people who are just, it's kind of like when you find someone who's a giant, and as in they're like 7+ feet tall, or there's the little people or dwarfs or however they're, whatever the term is. The reality is that I don't think that those are accidents. I think that we are in a giant pool of a growing, a reawakening and a collective actualization of abilities, whether it is Wim Hof and conscious control of your immune system, but these existences of entities, I don't know if they're interdimensional, because that's the first place everybody goes. It's an easier step to believe that they're from a different universe, they're from a different dimension, they're from a different time, than to actually admit that the human experience right now, that there's 8 billion people that are collectively creating a mental RAM space to tap into and also generate or maintain a connection to these other humans that have lived on the planet, and that there's a chance that we're not actually looking at shadows or past representations of them, that the reason they are here is because of some of the sciences we're able to put words on, like the Harvard scientists that encoded that book in 2008, and we've moved on and we've discovered that you can pass down memories on to, from mother to child. But the fact is that we have, I think, a collective consciousness that isn't just a matter of, oh yeah, everybody living maybe one day could re-tap in their pineal gland and talk to people directly without a cell phone. I'm not just saying that. I think there's enough, not only theoretical, but actual science to say that it seems like these apparitions are real because we can call on them individually or collectively, or they're part of, they're basically like a computer disk array that has, like a RAID array, which is a backup system for where you just don't have a single hard drive like in a single computer. You have 5, and the disk arrays protect each other. So if one disk fails, you can recreate the missing data. So I think that's kind of how we were designed, if that's a long enough answer for you.
So that's a
Ghosts
yes?
are real.
So that's a yes.
That's a big yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in saying that, Jared, you wrote a book about past civilizations and how it's not aliens, worse it's us. All of these past civilizations that had high technology and everything else, even before the Egyptians, and the whole pyramid culture, whether the Egyptians took over the pyramids that they happened to find or not. Why are we not seeing ghosts from that time?
Yeah, I think.
Or are we, Sysco?
There's the interesting thing. Right now, we have all these. I think this is really interesting. In the very early stages of history, Newtonian physics is, it didn't really happen, but Newton gets an apple dropped on his head, and then physics becomes kind of important. But the center of the universe for the last few thousand years has been chemistry, i.e. alchemy, the idea that you mix a bunch of elixirs and puppy dog tails and bat's wings and dragon tails, and you get recipes. And chemistry was this big thing, and then along comes physics, and it's like, oh, physics seems kind of important, and then along comes quantum mechanics, and I write all this, not the last couple of things, but about Schrodinger and about quantum mechanics. I do mention all this in my book, where he himself, Schrodinger, the guy with the cat in the box analogy, like if a tree falls in a forest, does somebody hear it? And the idea of quantum mechanics in itself was literally something Schrodinger hated. He literally said, I hate the idea of quantum mechanics. It makes everything in the world of physics terrifying. And it was realized that the real light of the center of science is really quantum and not Newtonian physics and alchemy and chemistry. And I think likewise, when that happened, I think it really refocused science, and we are where we are today on these devices and talking because of that paradigm shift. And now today, in the last 50, 40, so really since the so since the 20s on in Ouija boards, what happened is we had this world of paranormal, and that, and ghosts fall into it. Then we have this world of UFOs, and they kind of cross each other. And then we have all these native mythological creatures. And I think I want to be very careful for everyone listening to make it really clear that if there's any groups of people on this planet we should listen very carefully to about closer to the truth of our past, it's every native culture on this planet. They need to be put above religious institutions that are more commonly known in the Western world. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that these native peoples all over the globe have stories that relate to creatures and gods and deities and things that we think are folklore, that are just mythological. And I think all of it, paranormal, UFOs, including ghosts, can all be filtered into one column. And just like physics and chemistry went quantum, and it's really, we live in a quantum world. I think that these echoing technologies of the past have been mistaken. Some people may have seen chupacabra. Some people may have seen the Loch Ness Monster. Some people have had weird, like synesthesia. I talk about that in the book, and about these different, where the five senses are not only mixed, but we almost have like a three-dimensional television monitor mind space that we can see really extraordinary things and taste things that we shouldn't be able to taste, associated with numbers versus colors versus shapes. And there's these abilities where we swear we saw a ghost, and we saw somebody do something, or there was a premonition. And there's so many shows about real experiences that I don't think it's easily chalked up, but I think it is an easy insight into active mental states of a technology that was, again, we think of technology as the devices we're on and the things that we view and the cars we drive and the clothes we wear and the homes we live in. I'm talking about organic technology, things that we mistake right now for just plain old nature, are machines.
All right.
And yeah, right. So basically, in a nutshell, you're talking about abilities where when we see a paranormal creature or something, whether it's a one of folklore or a ghost, and like you said, sometimes they're in Victorian clothing or they're old. I think part of that has to do with an unexplained to us now. This is where I'm going to geek out. I think that it relates to our mental abilities right now to tap into our own stored genetic memory. And it's easier for us right now, the living, to access the last 100, 200, 300, maybe even 1,000 years, or the in quotes, recent history. And the reason we manifest those peoples faster or more frequently is because we're by default not as able to quickly forget those, the way it's carried in our genome as a stored memory. We're just, for some unknown reason, we're able to access that faster. But then people who get more in tune, people who, I'm not at all promoting ayahuasca or peyote or some other altered state, but I do believe people who jumpstart those abilities, or people who are heavily dedicated to real serious meditations where you do end up in those altered states, the reason they connect to what's described as either the Godhead or to even people further back in time, or not like remote viewing, but even in periods of time and space, I think that's because they're able to reach layers that are in all of us. So I just think it's less frequent that somebody does. I joked about Cleopatra, but I think it's less frequent that people contact people further back in time than it is for, it's not like they're trying to think of great grandpa who lived on the farm, but I think that the shadows of our really collective high-tech consciousness, it's easy to recall and project those living people in those last few hundred years. That's one working theory I have.
Jared, you would be the Senate's worst witness.
Oh yeah.
I could just see them now, like yes or no question, yes or no question. Sysco,
Okay.
are you still there?
In fact,
Well,
moving forward, I'm just going to say yes or no.
No.
What do you think about that? He makes some
Wait a minute.
fascinating
Hold
points.
up. Back up.
All right.
You ask me what I think about all of that from which part on? Because well, the thing is my simple answer is I think all of that can be true. However, I also think it's true that ghosts exist. And if what this young gentleman is very smart just said, Native American tribal traditions, that's my base. I'm Lenape and Cherokee. And I can tell you that we are very in tune with the spirit world. One of my stories that I used to tell you all the time, when I've been on the show or you've been on mine, that my grandmother was showing me herbs in the woods, and at this point in time, you're talking about 70s, and if you think about it in time, a century, centuries of blink, decades, even quicker blink. But if you think about this woman was born in 1890, so when she was growing up in the area in the Northeast, there was still reason to keep your heritage a secret, because bad things happen to people who were Native American. I mean, look back at history. You follow me so far?
Yeah.
Everything she would tell me was very secret. She would always look around before she told me about an herbal tea, like sassafras. It's good for this. It's good for your stomach. It's good for this, this, and this. And this is how this is how you harvest it. And she would always tell me, take you only take 1/3. I mean, everything was very traditional. And the thing is we just don't want to be extinct. We don't want our traditions to be extinct. So I paid attention from a very young girl. But the thing was that she told me this one day was we were going through a cut in the woods, like a trail, a well-worn trail to get somewhere. And she would then tell me, I was probably 6 or 7. She would tell me, you stick to the trail, you never go. There's parts of the woods you don't want to go to. There's some parts of the woods that belong to the woods. And
that's so interesting.
As as it progressed and as she trusted me more, she would tell me things, and she would then tell me there are things that live in the woods and in nature that we don't speak of, because when you speak of them, they hear you, they connect into your energy, and just trust me. So a little bit longer, we finally got to this one part where she was telling me that don't be afraid, because they're as natural as you are. But when you respect their area, they respect yours. They want to live as much as you. And we would have these conversations. And the one time I told her, I said, well, that's kind of scary. She said, no, she says, I just don't want them to take you with them. And that was the first time I started learning about portals and time slip and things like that. So I get where you're coming from. I absolutely do. And I agree with every bit of it. The thing is, I think all of this is connected in some way. Do you see what I'm saying? We're all connected. Energy is connected. I think we try to figure it all out, and it blows my mind. Like you said, too, another dimension. It makes it easier to say, like, these things come in from another dimension. But I've grown up all my life knowing that some of them do. Just because we don't know how to go in and out doesn't mean they don't. And that's what I was raised learning about in the short amount of time that I had that grandmother with me. I also learned that we are energy, and I totally get where you're coming from with, we only use 10% of our brain and all that kind of thing. But I also believe we don't use a lot of our senses. And when we're taught to be still, and like I said at the beginning about using your intuition and things like that, like, if you don't trust someone right away, trust that into it. We talk ourselves out of it, like in more native terms, it's like the rabbit doesn't question when it feels a predator. It runs, or it hides, or it does its camouflage, whatever it does to survive. It's instinct. And I think we've talked ourselves out of that in a lot of ways. So when I tell someone that I had an experience with what I perceive to be a ghost, I usually say my terminology only. It doesn't mean that it can't be said different. A ghost to me is an earthbound spirit that, for whatever reason, has either gotten stuck or chosen to stay out of free will, which we all have, or just confused, its own little box, like you were saying, or our own perception. And then I've know that there's others that have crossed over and come back. Now, I've sat and I've talked to people who told me, no, you didn't. Those are all demons. Okay, that comes from how they were raised from a child to understand. And they bring you scripture and they bring you explanation and they say, no, you're talking to a demon. That's a trickster. That's this, that. Okay. Then I have people that tell me that, that wasn't a ghost you heard coming down the stairs. That was you running down the stairs last week. That's just a time echo. It's a time slip. Okay, possible. But I can also tell you that with my filters, my heart, my brain, my emotions, and the things I've learned to hone, my tools, that when I sit and I talk to someone, well, let's just say communicate with something that I've never met before, not my house, not my place, they didn't just pop up. Go in there and we take time and we go through to try to understand, why are you here? What do you want? And they're using scientific equipment that I couldn't explain to you if you held a gun to my head. That's not my gig. I'm not a tech person and I don't pretend to be. I use my tool. And then this person, human being that used to be alive, decides to leave. And I can feel that with every fiber of my being. There's something going on. Now, whether that's a connection, I mean, I totally respect everything you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that all of this, I believe, is connected, if that makes sense. But I also believe that time can also bleed into each other, where you have like these time slips, and there's like so many different famous ones, that people can talk about. I have no understanding of that. But I do have an understanding of someone who has died, and I'm minding my own business. I don't call on this. It usually comes and finds me. I'm not one of those people that go out looking for it or charged to do it, or I've never done that. It finds me at the right time, not my time, their time, or the universe's time. And I hear it out of my right ear, not from inside, outside. And it says, you need to help her. This actually happened. I'm in a grocery store buying vitamins, minding my own business. Help her. At the same time, I can feel let me get the words right. Bear with me a second. Mm-hmm. Desperation, loneliness, complete despair. Not evil, but dark. Very low vibrational human being coming I can't see on the other side of an aisle. Okay, out of my sight, I feel it coming. And at the same time, I'm hearing this, getting a little louder. It's a little high, higher. It's almost like somebody talking through a fan. If you've ever done that as a kid, you'd have to help her. She's going to give up. You got to tell her I'm okay. It's repeating this. I can feel it moving, and she finally comes around the corner, and this little old lady just barely pushing a cart, head down. And as she's getting closer, the emotion, her despair and grief is just surrounding me. At the same time, the only parts that don't feel enveloped by that are the voices coming into my ear and my own heartbeat. And now I have to make a decision. This is none of my business. I'm just trying to buy vitamins. I don't know this woman. Yet the voice that I've never heard before is persisting and pleading. You must help her. She's going to give up. And that's when Sysco says, oh, hell, who am I to stand between any of this? When might these people ever get this chance again? So I got to take my face and go up to a stranger and go, ma'am, I am so sorry. I can tell that you're having a hard time. Is there anything I can do to help you? You know, do you need, any assistance or whatever it is that I have to say to break into her personal space and ease myself into it? And I said, would it give you any comfort if I say today that you have every reason to live and to not give up? I can tell that you kind of look a little sad today, and talk to the person just a little bit, and then try not to shock her when I said, Harry says he loves you and not to give up. And the woman's face lights up and she looks at me with complete surprise. And I had to catch her by the elbow. This poor, frail little lady didn't fall. You can't tell me that's any kind of genetic memory or zip from the past. I didn't ask for that. It's a burden, but it's also a responsibility. Because if I had walked away from that, I was just a small connection in a tiny bit of someone who loved someone I never met. And he just wanted to tell her he was okay and to not give up and that he loved her. So I don't know what that is. I have no aspect, never heard that voice, that particular voice again. And that lady, she just looked at me. We talked a little bit more. In fact, I think she bought some vitamin C. And she walked off with a little more pep in her step. And she kept looking back at me. And I said, love exists and it never dies. And she smiled. And I didn't feel the despair anymore. So I don't know what that was. But I can tell you what I think it was. And I can tell you that I'm glad that I listened. Because there's been times that happened and I didn't do it. And I regret it to this day. Because who am I not to?
All right.
That's what my native people taught me.
Hang on a second, but before I get you to explain what you think it was, let me ask Jared first. Jared, what do you think that was?
Yeah, I think we're both totally agreeing. It's not a disagreement about anything. As far as genetic memory, I think you made me think of something that I've actually never explained, and I've talked about this a lot. And for people out there, I want to clarify. When I say genetic memory, I'm saying that there is for sure. Even mainstream science has proved they don't really want to go into too much detail, but there is a collective human consciousness. There is a vibrational. The world of vibrational medicine is something I'm trying to explain more directly with people, because I bring up synesthesia, which are these abilities to touch, taste, sense, and feel another human being in their entirety. And not everybody has full 5 sense synesthesia, but they estimate currently at least 20-25% of the population has it as they know it as a mutation. I don't think it's a mutation. I think it's a fundamental base of why and how you can connect to someone else. And when I say genetic memory, I don't mean it's just something that happened in the past. I'm saying that everything collectively happening on an ongoing and continuous basis is something that is shared. It's shared at a level that you may not know that you're sharing it, but it's out there and it's together and it's one giant fabric. And part of understanding vibrational medicine is to understand that we are literally beings of energy. There's Ken Wheeler's work is incredible on the difference between waves and frequencies and the cult. He calls atomists the cult of bumping particles. That the reality is that vibrational medicine, which is the umbrella that covers all homeopathic medicine of every kind, vibrational medicine is the general subject, which includes the very 1700s German doctors' original ideas of homeopathy to all the different methodologies explained, right down to Carillion photography. And prior to that, work in 1940 that showed unfertilized eggs and seeds show, when photographed and looking at their frequency and their magnetic qualities, show a fully grown what the pattern should be for a fully grown human or fully grown plant. And that's on the vibrational medicine. That's it. And we're talking technicals here, but that means that at every level where we are energy beings and we are literally connected to everything at all times, and we try to separate ourselves from that. When I say genetic memory, I'm not just, like I said, saying that you're remembering some dead person from years ago. I'm saying that abilities like synesthesia, which we've labeled, are not the only abilities we have, and being able to connect to one another didn't used to be the exception. But I am saying that based on upbringing, culture, your what in paleo world is like to be called positive gene expression, and it doesn't just mean you express really good genome and you have a six pack. I mean your mental fortitude, your connections with the earth and the planet and others. All of that is wrapped there's so many layers to it. So why she's connecting, and this is why we need to keep having these dialogues and having these shows and having people listen, is because everyone has a different angle that they're experiencing these things, and they think they're either the only one, or that it's weird, or that maybe they shouldn't talk about it, or maybe they are but they haven't heard anybody say anything that resonates with them, which is just, no matter how you go at the subject, the point is to try to keep harnessing and like you said, facing the ability takes courage. Connecting with someone, just like standing here or just pausing for a second for me to acknowledge how difficult it has to be someone who has been connected where other people are not. I think these are ancient abilities, and they are not foreign to any of us, but for those that are more consciously activated in them, it's a massive responsibility that you didn't ask for. And
that's right. And then you can't even, and I agree with everything you just said. The thing is this is the deal. It's good talking to you, because a lot of people will squash something and go, no, because this is real. This is what's really happening. It's this. And then this person over here is like, you don't understand what I experienced, and you can't, like I said back before, like a lot of times, people will try to, battle me and go, there's no way you talk to your mother because that was a demon. No, I'm sorry. I've honed my tools, my filters, my feelings. It's like, when somebody, that, what I'm talking about, when you meet somebody and you just know, inherently bad vibrations. I totally believe we're energy. I totally believe in vibration. It's like what's going on in the world right now. I've felt this coming for 20 years, maybe longer. I just maybe paid attention to it for 20. I kept saying, everybody, the world's making a fist. Watch this, talk to people on different levels. And that's why it's so interesting. But the thing that we think is only my interpretation of this can be true, without taking in everybody else's interpretation and seeing how they're similar, the beliefs are similar, how all of it can be connected and all of it can be true at the same time, is where I've been at for a long time. You see what I'm saying? I do believe all.
Yeah, and people need to spend a lot less time arguing about, okay, well, I experienced this, and in my world and in my history and my age group, I grew up with X number of shows and in search of, and that's paranormal, or I grew up super Catholic and that's a demon, or on top of it, I am still very Catholic as an example, and they say that's a demon. Or you grow up, or somebody else has a life experience and they're in the middle of their own processing and they're denying the experience and they're denying their heritage. And here's the problem: heritage, traditions, all of it labels what I think what we've done is we've deified and mystified a lot of ancient lost technology that it's not, when I say that, I think an initial filter that pops up, not for everyone, but I think an initial filter is, oh, you're making it mechanical. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's that these abilities at each angle that we come at them from are very, very old. And unfortunately, for those that want to label them, and again, in the last 6,000 years, and particularly in the last couple thousand years, it is not. I'm so sorry for everybody out there. Again, believe what you want on a legalistic religious basis. You don't want to stick with a religion that's been around the last couple thousand years and adamantly believe that, well, I have to plug this into my post Younger Dryas mythology / faith of one religion, and it has to fit this mold, and therefore it's a demon or it's an angel, or it's when you have to fit your experiences into something that is been created in the last couple thousand years, when it is very clear from every folklore and by every history of every native peoples, and even paleoanthropology from the 1800s shows hundreds of thousands, and if we do the Hindu Vedas, millions of years of human history. And some of that we found when we've talked to Michael Cremo, and that's Forbidden Archaeology, just not making anything up, literally just talking about paleoanthropological finds showing humans have been here for millions of years. The Klerksdorp spheres are man-made. They are not natural concretions. The oldest thing on this planet look like croquet balls found in South Africa, and we keep finding them, and they're 2.5 to 3.5 billion years old. And so the reality that people are uncomfortable depending on where they are. So this is the problem. Wherever they are with their consciousness, they experience and their life experience. They experience things, and they some people are more open or prepared to be more open to. I don't think there are a lot of people who actually believe that expanding their personal consciousness is actually, I think, in my opinion, is a duty. It's not about love everyone, free spirit, everyone's right, no one's truth is wrong. That's not it. It's what did you see at that accident scene from your point of view? Even if you were in the same car, you were in the back seat, you were on the street. Well, how do you describe where you're at? And the reality is that we have to have this conversation, and people have to be not open to believing one interpretation or another. We have to collectively know that at whatever consciousness level we're at, and with all the histories we have, that somewhere there is a total collective truth. And and if we're ever in doubt, at a minimum, it sounds cliched, but we are literally energy. It's not even a woo-woo thing. We are literally energetic creatures made out of actual energy, and we are connected. And it's cliche, but the fundamental basis of love and actual that there isn't an adversarial connection to the human connection. We are at a fundamental basis meant to love and care for each other, which somehow has been forgotten.
True. And to your benefit, to what you're saying, I've been around this long enough to look at that whole just the scenario I just told you that actually happened. The only thing I can tell you for sure, which is why I described how I felt her coming around, energy. That's energy I felt, her vibration that she was giving off.
Oh, totally believe it.
Yep. So I'm feeling that. Now, what I felt coming in my right ear, which is usually where I get these things. I do have other things that'll come, the voice will be inside my head. I don't know how to explain that, but it's different. It's coming from a different place, a different thing. I know that sounds so crazy, but it's true. I'm just being honest. So the vibration I'm getting from what I felt come toward me, okay, if that makes sense, that totally different from what I felt coming around the corner. Nothing but good, nothing but love, higher vibration, like unconditional. I'm not just talking about love. I'm talking about like unconditional, love, just goodness, like something like you would feel like if you were talking about an angel entered the room, if you want to put that name on it. Okay. That's what I'm feeling. Now, I'm open-minded enough to say, although it sounded like a male voice, although to me, even though it sounded like he was talking to a fan, I don't know how to explain that, but if you were ever a little kid and had those little fans, you could talk behind it. You kind of sound like Darth Vader in a little way. But anyway, I'm open-minded enough to think, okay, here's a for instance. It might not been so-called Harry, which we would guess was her husband or somebody, it could be a brother or something, that cared about this woman. Pure love. I need to help her. You're listening. You need to say it. Whatever that was. I'm open-minded enough to think that it could have been just a higher vibrational being trying to help her. Could have been her, higher vibrational self from another time. Maybe, I still believe that our consciousness could be in two places at once.
Yeah,
If that makes
it could have
sense.
been her, huh? I mean, there's no telling.
Right, right. But I'm just saying, I'm willing to look at it like that. However, I'm here on Earth in this time, and I have to make conscious decisions on what to do with this in a split second when I'm just trying to buy vitamins. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's what hits us, and I think it's very confusing for people sometimes because, they'll say, I have a ghost in my house or whatever, and, you've got to talk to me. And I have people, I had 3 today, and they're asking me in short little sentences, this is what happened, give me the answer. Honey, I can't do that. First of all, I don't know your mental state, and I'm not saying this, I'm saying this to you. I mean, is there any drugs in the house? Are you going through anything? What's the family like? What's going on? You know what I mean? There's so many things involved in this. More times than not, I have found that what people think that might be, say, a haunted house is just them, and they have abilities that they're suppressing, and they're causing it, like PK.
Totally makes sense.
Do you see what I'm saying? So, so what are we dealing with? Is there any kind of, abuse in the house? Is there arguing? What's the family, dynamic? There's a lot of deeper things going on here. What's okay. Now, once you do the family dynamic, what's the land like? Are you by water? Are you by, certain kind of rocks? Are you by, quartz? Are you by, what I'm saying? There's
Yeah,
so
you're totally tuned in on it. Water is one of the fundamental I mean, it wasn't just Dr. Emoto Masuru. There is some odd stuff around water, and it's connected to all of us. It's mostly what we are, and it mimics our health. It mimics our sickness. It mimics cures.
Yeah.
I mean, the very basis for homeopathic, the interesting thing about homeopathic medicine is they found from the beginning that the more you dilute something down to the point where there's even a shadow of the original plant in it, the more you dilute it, the more powerful it is. The more it's just that it's programmed the water, it's almost like the very delivery of the very abilities of the human body and all nature to mimic health has nothing to do with an external insertion of something foreign, but of the correct tuning. We woo-woo it down to, oh, it's a correct frequency. No, literally it is a correct frequency. This is what a healthy plant that cures this bad frequency disease. That's what Anthony Holland established. That's why there's actual video of him destroying MRSA and leukemia and other bacteria with sound and viruses with sound. All of this is tying into the fact that we are energy, literally energy, vibrational creatures, that whether it's plant, animal, or mineral. And I think what you said was, just as backing up for a second on the entities in the house, I think that those are physical manifestations of their own, like you said, it's that families or persons or couples, even right down to their animals and pets. It's a collective manifestation of either issues or resolutions or things that if they were listening to within themselves would not manifest externally.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, that's
And
deep.
in a lot of cases, not all, but
but that's one. Yes, there was so much you said that was so. I mean, you've been at this a lot longer, and it's just so fascinating and fun to talk to you.
Well, cool, and it's fun and you're fascinating to talk to as well.
Oh.
See, that's the thing. It's like you can't just go in 1 hour, And like I said, I don't do this. I'm not, I have gone with paranormal groups just because they wanted another opinion, and I think that's fascinating. That's wonderful. I hated it like 10 years ago when they said, "Okay, just science, no feelings, no feelings." But how can you deal with a human being? Do you see what I'm saying, though? You get my point? And I think the combination is awesome because when we've gone in, we once did a test one. Here's one that'll blow your mind. Well, maybe not, but at least make you think. We went in, lots of multiple problems, and this one was actually, if I can just go ahead and say, there was hauntings going on. There was a couple of different ghosts, and to pull up stories of these people and to actually then get to, if you want to say communicate, because that's basically what I am. I communicate with them. They listen to me. It's like, read my intent. I'm here to help you. What's going on? Let's calm down, because if you're dealing with an erratic person that's stuck in their, the essence of this person that's left behind, whatever, and they're erratic and angry and confused or stuck in what I call their death state, if you can imagine, like somebody's been murdered, went through a horrific thing. And this may just be the energy that was left behind, and who knows? Some of their energy may have gone wherever you go. Dissipated and gone, like, boiling water turns to steam and dissipate. I don't know. But in this time, we went in and, blind, of course, we didn't know what we were walking into. And this had been something that had been ongoing, but they were trying to figure it out, because one person thought they were, oh, that's, we see a little girl. Okay, now hear me out, because this is a trip. We see a little girl. Oh, that's Sadie. She died of rheumatic fever back, and we did the history on the house, and that's her. And, we just leave her. We bought her a doll. We put it up in the room, and we leave her alone, and that's cool. And we see her, she does this, this, and this. Okay, cool. Well, and the banging on the door and the knocking on the back door and, the things we hear in the barn, that's Harry, such and such and whatever. And they've got this whole explanation. Have you ever seen those? I'm sure you've seen some shows where they have it all figured out, and it's like, okay, first of all, ghosts aren't pets, so we need to find out if this is something, why it's here, and what's going on, and if not, cool, we move on. So we go in, and we've got a medium, we've got, a psychic medium, we've got some other people with abilities or whatever. We all go in and we assess the area. Everybody walks around, they're just taking notes, nobody's talking. Everybody's just feeling the thing out. We all go back outside, regroup. What do you think? And we talk. And we compare notes. Very interesting. This is the part. I got one. We're all feeling the same energy. Now we're talking about frequencies and energy and what we're feeling through our filters. Everybody's got their own. I can only speak for myself. I knew the second I walked in there, that wasn't Sadie. Whatever is projecting itself as Sadie is so evil and so dirty and so low vibrational. There's no way that thing was ever a little girl, if ever human. Don't know what it was. Don't pretend to put a name on it, but it's not Sadie. And I haven't said anything yet. The woman next to me was far wiser and more abilities than I will ever have. She says to me, that's not Sadie. Sadie crossed. Okay, she's over on the other side with her mother, her brother, yada, yada. This was her input, okay? She sees a black mass where this little girl was supposed to be. The other one sees a young man, very disheveled, overhauled, scraggly hair, really busted up, like it had been in a bad accident and just really seething angry. They were all the same thing. Everybody saw something different or felt the same energy. But over a long period of time of going back, figuring it all out, it was just an angry young man who had died. It wasn't Harry, it wasn't Sadie. But it had been called Sadie so much that it said if they wanted to see a little girl to get attention, I'll manifest that way. Very interesting case. Now, all of course, the equipment, the science part of this was picking up different things. And, we got a few EVPs and voices, but those didn't come through till we all got in there and started concentrating on this one energy that was so angry. And, like I said, some of us saw it as a black mass, of just energy, just, confused, horrible energy. And it was all this one guy, it turned out to be. So isn't that odd, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to go in and say, definitely, I know this is Sadie because she died of rheumatic fever and we've seen her walking up and down the stairs. Even though you've seen it, you've heard it, you've got a history, a logical explanation, and that works for you. It may not be true. And this guy was just so angry and so confused because he had taken a long time. He died in a tractor accident, and he had died. It took him a long time to die, and he was pretty cut up, and he was pretty angry about the whole thing. And it's just a long story. But anyway, that's what happened. So one thing, perceiving itself to other people, 3 different ways, and probably more because of the family and what they had seen. And it's interesting, is it not?
I think it is, because it ties into the idea of, again, if we can acknowledge that we are connected on higher levels, and if we do, and I said genetic memory, but the idea of, again, conscious abilities like synesthesia, where we're connected to each other and ourselves, and I said earlier that maybe there's an external consciousness of a manifestation of an unresolved conflict or idea between people that manifests itself in what appears to be an entity, and it doesn't resolve itself. I don't actually think that it's associated with a particular, like, we first look back and go, oh, there was this violent incident. And I do think some of those screaming thoughts or energies of the person that may have been hurt may exist. But then I also think that there is conflict between people, whether it's generational or between parents and kids, or husbands and wives, or vice versa. And those ideas, they don't get resolved, and they manifest into a physical paranormal entity. The reality is they stick with the location while the people have either moved on or died, not because they're attached to the home or even the incident, but they're attached actually through the collective consciousness with the people who didn't resolve those issues. And it's not that they wanted to not follow those people. I think a lot of times they attach to the location of the conflict that these people are still wanting to resolve for themselves. And whether they've moved or not, the conflict, once it's separated itself from the people it was associated with, is still waiting and looking for a solution. And it's still able to, it is an energy, collective human creation, and it's still waiting. I'm still here. I'm identifying myself. Anyone going to resolve this? And then there are people who can tap into it. And I don't know how much you've heard of my past interviews, but the way I describe it is the blinky board that people have been banging on for 1,000 years. You bang on the left, you get orange. You bang on the right, you get red. And then someone walks up 1,000 years later and says, well, why are you banging on the control panel of a 747? That's a plane. It flies. But somebody else says heresy, or this is the blinky board, and we get it to do these two things, and that's what it does because we've been doing it 1,000 years. And I think what's happened is that at 10 to 15% consciousness and the way we operate now, different people who walk into the room, and I don't think it has anything to do with that other gal having better or different ability, or she has different abilities than you had. But I think that you and her and everyone that can actually experience and connect and see or feel, where somebody else might walk in and go, my elbow itches, I see nothing, feel nothing. I think it's just that in some ways we're still able to connect to these higher functions, and other people can't. But it's not that they couldn't, they can't, because of where they're at for a number of, not because they don't have the ability or they're not conscious enough, but there are people who are just still naturally tuned in to some of these very complex abilities. And here you are connecting with it and able to connect to a point, but all the wiring, the vibrational frequency, the pineal gland, the what we know about vibrational medicine and the auras around people and around everything and the way everything is tuned or not tuned, I think that we're a little, it sucks, but I think we're all a little stuck because we don't know how to tune all the instruments and play the symphony again yet.
Yep. And maybe we're not ready to either, because another thing, going back to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to just keep, I know conflict.
No, I'm excited. This is great.
No, go ahead.
Because one of the things I was going to say is that one of the things, tuning back to, I always say the elders, basically when I say that, it's somebody much wiser, and you go to them, you shut up and you listen, because they've been through, they've lived 90 years on this planet, and they would tell me that basically, don't try to explain something to someone. It's like you're walking down a road. Let me explain it this way. You're walking down a road that you've been down 100 times. You know the way. Almost every. You could say almost every flower, every tree. You know what I mean? You know the way it curves, and you know that there's a pothole here or whatever. And somebody else has not been on that road before. You're trying to understand why they don't know that pothole's there, and you're telling them, "Be careful, you're going to fall." Well, they're not listening because they've got their own arrogant whatever, and they're going on. They don't want to listen until they fall. Some people aren't ready yet. They're on the journey and they haven't opened up their mind enough or had enough experiences in their own development. Not that they're not smart. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with their own development of understanding, and sometimes they're not ready. And we deal with that all the time in what we call the supernatural paranormal, more like this in the supernatural realm, because what is supernatural? Well, it's natural, but it's super. What does that even mean? Because it's around, like when you tell everybody, like, you get this one love, we're all connected. And people like to put that on signs and put it on T-shirts and, make some really great songs about it. But what does it really mean? It means we're all connected. It means we're all the same with differences. And the differences should be celebrated because it makes that person unique, because it would be crappy if we all walked around the same way, looked the same, and didn't have any. Do you see what I mean? But we are all connected. We're all energy. And I explain it to people like, well, what do you mean we're all connected? And then, like you said, you go back to religions. Well, how far are you going back? You're going back to this, you go back to that. And it goes way back, time. How far does time go back? Okay.
You're
well,
right.
If you take it down to the very simple thing of source, or connection of energy and a vibration of, well, where do you want to be in that vibration? You want to be really low, vibrating really low, and really, all the lower vibrational feelings of regret and despair, and where I'm going, hatred and anger, and, all the heavy stuff. Or do you want to be lighter and be up here and just, I think we're here in this part right now. Not necessarily the only place to do this, by the way. So the universe is huge, right? Endless, as far as I'm concerned. But right now, to learn to be higher vibrational beings. And the reason we go through all this crap and crud and turmoil and whatever is to try to rise above it and learn more and be wiser. That's just my theory.
Yeah. And I think that whatever we're doing now, it's we each have to keep trying to make these connections, because I do think collectively as a consciousness, we do need to value all human life. And the more of it that it re-exists on the planet, I don't think we were ever less than 8 billion. I do think the planet sustained many more. And as we collectively increase that, there is energies and human RAM, I call it, available that is causing these awakenings. And so if we experience it one way or the other, tradition or otherwise, we've been around a very long time. And I think Michael asked a really good question about why don't we have like ancient high-tech human ghosts? And I personally think that the manifestation of any collective experience or individual experience of an entity or something, what we're going to quote paranormal, I think that the reason, again, it's the last couple hundred years, or if it is like that unresolved murder or violent end or something like that, I think the reason that I think for the untold hundreds of thousands of years of human history, I think that if we are collectively still saving and storing each other in a way, I think that as we can support technology and consciousness, I am suggesting that there is a time where when you remanifest people who have been staying saved in the ether like a zip file, that when you unzip and you remanifest those people, that their unresolved issues would manifest in possibly these formats that we experience as paranormal or ghost like, but it would be, again, the hauntings of experiences that are possibly externalized unresolved issues that are just waiting within the ether to be taken care of by that group, but they're collectively stored. And really what we experience a lot more of is what's been bothering the last, or this collective group of humanity that's been in these physical roles in the last few hundred or thousands of years, if you want to quote it back to the last, the last civilization that we're going to call Sumer or whatever. But I do think that it's on one level, it's a mystery. On the other hand, we're making these connections. There's too many people that have been at it for too long. And as you pointed out earlier, I can't agree more on as particularly any native group that has a matter of fact association with, we're connected to the earth. That thing you said earlier that I think is really important was, hey, when you're walking with your mom and she says, that's a forest that you let be a forest. You don't go into that forest. And I think that, I personally think that that's connected to things like Peter Mulholland's work about the secret life of trees. And I talk about Pando in my book, that giant living entity that they thought was the largest entity on Earth, those 50,000 aspen. Well, it's 40,000. It used to be more, and it's 80,000. Anyway, the number keeps changing because it's dying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we found that there are funguses that are larger. And I do think that we did terraform the planet, that I talk a lot about ancient engineered soil. So I think that it has physical, it's called terra preta, but it's also called Chernozems. They found it in North America. They found it all over Latin and South America. And it's in North Africa. It's in Australia. It's everywhere. And I think that there was a connected, cultivated system where we were connected literally by walking on the ground and being connected physically with the earth, with the trees, with these fungal networks, that this is part of that eco-biological system that is really high technology science that we equate to nature. And I do think some forest jobs were to actually be forests. But the technicalities of that were lost, but the tradition remained of, you leave that forest alone, because it went from having a known function to something sacred that isn't. I'm not saying that native peoples of any kind or anybody doesn't have sacred and special things within their culture and religion, but I think it's sacred for multiple reasons. I don't think it's random that they think that there are some forests, they have an instinct. They know they shouldn't touch it, and there's a reason, and that's definitely part of what I do think is like a hard stored memory of something that is relevant. It exists as an instinct, but we forgot the facts. But
and it's also too that one of our base things are, if you look at it, and I can only talk for me and the people that I've been around, and I've been lucky enough to adventure into other native cultures as well, to not have my own, because we're kind of scattered, if you hadn't noticed. So, but you want to get in there, and my interest is, the tradition and why, what do we do? And so they don't die. Like I said, we don't want to be extinct. And the only way to keep from being extinct is to continue on, it's that simple. So, my major thing is always giving back to nature. Always, when you give back to nature, it gives back to you. If you noticed what I said about how we collect herbs, you take 1/3, you leave 2. You see, you could only take where a lot of other people came in and take all of it. And, in greed and ignorance, wiped all of it out. We understood that. I forget the name of the plant right now. I'm going blank, but right next to the poison ivy is the plant that cures what poison ivy does to you. And right next to poison oak, same thing. Where you find certain poisonous snakes, you're going to find plants that cure or at least help you through what a snake bite will do to the human body. Now, to me, growing up and studying herb, because I'm, you know, at least a practicing herbalist on my family. I don't do it for business or anything, and it saved my life more than once. You know, Conflict can tell you that. He knows the stories. So, fascinating to me that that's not something that happens by, I might choose the wrong word here, not really evolution, because why would a plant cause a certain poison to a human being? Not necessarily an animal, because you notice a lot of times it doesn't have effects on animals, especially indigenous animals to that area, right? That may very well be what you would call like an evolution. Or do you see where I'm going with this? But
Yeah.
how in the world does one plant grow next to another that cures what it would do to a human being? That blows my mind. But yet it still exists. It exists worldwide in many different places. So that right there tells me that there's something, um, some would say divine, some would say more intelligent, some would say all knowing. Maybe, again, you would say it's us. You know, like if you
Well,
go back, well,
actually, to
like
interrupt, I will validate as far as homeopathic research goes from late 1700s from, I think it's Herman or Hermannen, the guy who discovered homeopathic recipes and remedies. It was a German professor. And as he got into it, vibrational medicine, the fundamental basis is all these plants vibrate at a particular frequency. And the whole basis for homeopathic medicine is like cures like, was what he established. Is that when you found an herbal medicine that when given to someone, in the sense of it being a poison or an irritant, when you gave it at them at a micronized dose, you could, or at a certain level, you could recreate the fever and symptoms of whatever the fever was and whatever the symptom, and the like cures like became the fundamental basis for homeopathic medicine, where they ultimately established and absolutely figured out that you could dilute one of these plants to the point where the level, according to which is a joke for Newtonian medicine, is yeah, it's like a homeopathic remedy. They joke that what is totally contrary to Newtonian medicine and pharmacokinetic crap, which is high dose, up it in the bloodstream. That's how you get a cure. That's how pharmaceuticals work. That's how real science works. Yet you have example after example, natural tradition after tradition, where just the very shadow of the essence in the most diluted format within a water, within a solution, which diluted to the point where there's almost nothing left, but the vibrational frequency energy of the water itself is mimicking the like cure like, that when you administer it, the human body can re-resignate, create the antibodies, and create the cure. This is actual vibrational medicine. This has been fact for 200-300 years now, and it's not even some crazy out there woo-woo quantum science thing. They've refigured this out, and it is vibrational medicine. This is established, whether people are comfortable with it or not. It seems like, again, it's not a coincidence. Why is it that everywhere you go, the cures and remedies exist on a vibrational level? Always.
Well,
And there are cultures that never forgot it. I think you should be paying attention. I mean, I think we should all be paying attention.
Have you ever saw the crystal bowls? Just the sound vibration, and of course, you can go back to Tibetan monks, and the throat. I forget what you call it, but you know what? The singing that comes from the throat and all that healing. Just it's amazing, and it cannot be denied that we are, we're energy, we're water, vibration, and we get that out of whack so much. If you think about what we do to ourselves, you go to work, you go to the traffic, you go to the grind, you go to the job you hate, you come home and the kids are upset and they've had, all the stuff, we get all out of whack, which in point can also cause, a mass of that energy being clogged and causing, like we said earlier. What a lot of times people are now calling that a poltergeist rather than, that's all the paranormal back and forth, back and forth. But the fact remains the same. Energy can cause that. It could be a young teenage girl, like we said in the beginning, that is suppressing. It seems to be mostly in women, which is odd, young girls. But I'm sure it's around young males as well. But it seems to be more prominent in them in many cases. Who knows why? That are suppressing abilities and not knowing what to do with them. Energy. It's amazing. All these different things. And like you said, too, I was saying earlier that the pendulum swings, right? So as what you're saying is you can go so far into the future, okay? So we could also be, and I'm using layman's terms because I don't have the vocabulary you do, but bear with me here. The pendulum of time swings, right? So it could be a lot of and I've, like I said, open-minded on this, our higher self or higher vibrational beings coming back from the coming to us from the future to help us now, but it also can swing the other way and from the past, because what do we really know about time? It's relative, correct? I mean, seriously, I know that was a terrible way to describe it, but
no, I think that's really good. And something else you said earlier that I forgot to touch on was people think this is all good stuff. The problem is that we all have really bad vibration, the words and the intent, like Dr. Emoto's work, but it's also Burr's work in the 1940s. Modern scientists have done this, that intention, not just towards water, but people, intent, like they've experimented with healers. It was done at a college in Montreal in the 60s. The whole idea is like, does healers actual touch, whether through bottles, to water, to seeds, does healing hands or do people who claim to be healers, does it actually work? And it absolutely relates to magnetic and vibrational energy. But on the flip side, if you are a bad person, if you have bad vibes, literally are constantly thinking dark, evil, crappy thoughts, they do manifest energy, and energy that, because you can create it, is quite just like maybe an aberration of something positive or just confused or unresolved. I do think it can manifest something really terrible, or I hesitate to use the word evil, but it can create some very bad. It's not. It can swing evil and bad and harmful, and it's something to pay attention to.
All right. Hang on. I'm gonna bust in here a second because I wanna stay on that for a second. We only have about 15 minutes left. I want to ask you, Sysco, do you believe that there's like an evil energy out there?
Of course. If you believe in good, you got to believe in evil as well. Yes, well, I will use the word evil.
Okay, so if everything... Hang on. If everything is alive and the plants are alive and we're alive, wouldn't there be evil plants, evil plant frequency, evil everything, evil water?
I can't answer that, but I could tell you this. My Native American mind, what I have to work with now in my knowledge bank, I would have to say that I don't think evil exists in a nature-based environment. And what I mean by that,
you think it's like time?
Not that there's not. Look. You can have animals that kill and or can ravage things. That, to me, that's more nature. It's survival of the fittest. It's that. I'm talking about evil. Do I think there's demonic plants? I would have to say at this point in time, no, because everything I know of nature is balanced. So, good and bad balance? No, I'd say more like something we really can't understand, because everything in nature feeds off itself from, the molecular structure up into the air and the sun and the rays and the air, water, everything. It comes back around. That's what we were taught. That's why you don't destroy anything. That's why they always tell you, if the bees die, we die, you know. And if this happens, and we've really destroyed a lot of that stuff. If there's evil beings walking through nature, they're probably on human feet. I just don't, I can't see an evil plant or an evil tree unless it's got some kind of,
So evil is not natural then.
I don't
Evil isn't natural, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I'm going to say evil isn't natural, because I believe that all our feelings, I mean, even though they're poked around and prodded by, our environment and stuff like that, I believe that everybody's got a free will. We all make choices. I don't know. I think the argument could be made depending on, it is someone who's born. Then we can get into reincarnation and souls and DNA and all kinds of stuff. But I don't think anybody's born evil. I think it's learned. But I could be wrong in that, because I don't have a knowledge base large enough to dig around in it. But I would like to hope not. I think it's something that's learned. Now, if you're talking about things coming from other places, whether it be dimensional or planes or, universe, I don't know. I honestly have to say I don't know on that. I'd like to think no. I think evil is something. I don't know. I don't think people. I think people have done some evil things, but I don't think they're inherently evil. I think it has to be learned or beaten into them, or be some kind of a mental breakdown, because I just don't think we're supposed to be that way.
So you don't think that there's like a spiritual battle of good versus evil, that sort of thing?
I do. That I do. But I don't think it's, I think it could be fed by us, but I certainly don't think there's evil plants. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I agree. I don't think that it's a matter of, it's very hard for us to shake off what we've grown up with, our culture, and the idea that there's an army that you join that's good or bad is something that we on this planet, you can make a choice of the groups of people you collectively belong with, like a group on a social media site. But in the universe and in the galaxy and the dimensional space, is there an evil warlord of consciousness? I don't think it's one that exists above what is ultimately the fundamental current of everything, which is a positive energy. I don't think that you could even say that I don't believe that energy is good or bad and that we assign a value to it, but I don't think the fundamental natural disposition or the natural ebb and flow of what is manifested is evil. Does that make sense?
So do you think that there are entities out there that are trying to keep our consciousness on a lower frequency?
I was thinking about what you had said the other day about that, and I was going to bring this up. I guess glad you brought it up. I just think it's personally, I think that there are much more practical beings that we're misidentifying as UFOs that are likely ancient, lost high-tech humans that do or don't have a pony in the game of keeping all of us ants on the planet numb or simplified or in our amnesia. I wonder if they do have an interest in keeping us, like they won't get rid of us, but they won't let us really get back to awakening our consciousness. It makes me wonder if we're not only, at 10 to 15% consciousness, it's almost like, is it an intentional prison that we're in, that we lost something? We lost a conflict in the past, and this is our sentence, or this is the way that they keep us from losing control? It is a question that I have.
It is. That makes a lot of sense too. But I'm also saying, why couldn't both exist at the same time?
Right, because we could be as higher dimensional frequency, vibrational, actual. This is real. I'm not saying it some woo-woo way. We are actual vibrational frequency entities, that we are everything dielectric, magnetic. It's all the same thing. We are energy beings. We are all connected. The entire universe is connected. And the reality is we manifest things, good and bad. We may shape it into something bad out of anger or spite or grief or all the above or all the other emotions. And the reality is that creates something. And collectively, the mind-blowing concept that we as a collective people, with all the different languages, irrelevant, that collectively we, the people that are existing on this planet, collectively manifest, consciously or unconsciously, we manifest things that we may have no idea what the actual entity is that we create out of that unintentional consciousness. So it could have very, I hate, biblical implications in reference to how evil could it be, but it's not, I'm not saying it's biblical. I'm just saying that it is something that we collectively as a planet are capable of manifesting. And it could be something we have to be careful of. It's just as much as having good intentions is bad. So it could be absolutely both.
Right, right. And like I said too in the very beginning, I honestly believe that on some level, and believe me, I'm no scientist. I'm just a chick with some abilities and a big heart. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of experiences. but so I'm willing to say that, like that person walking down the road, I don't know where all the potholes are. I could dig the trees and the scenery and stuff, but I'm going to fall in a pothole if I'm not paying attention. So, maybe in my journey, I'm not ready to go there because I just don't have all that expanded. I just think that I know enough to say I don't know, and I certainly don't have all the answers. And that goes paranormal, supernatural. I know in my heart that certain things I feel at this time are true. And I also know enough to know that all of these things could be true at one time. Because to me, honestly, I've seen too much to say that this can't exist over here. Because until I saw that and what I perceive it to be, I didn't know that existed either, And from being raised up the way I was raised up, to have an open mind and also have respect, not only for myself, but for everything around me, and to have respect for you and what you think and what your experiences are, and to listen to you and take them in and roll them around in my Rolodex and go, wow, it pretty much fits in here. It's just that I think that a lot of things can happen all at the same time, because I don't know how big this universe is, and I don't know what the universe's ability is. I don't even know what mine are. I know I can love. I know I can get angry. And I know I can get angry to myself for being angry. I haven't even figured out that. So, but, to throw at you, I have a question probably to end it, because I know Conflict's running out of time here, but what would you think about if I told you there was a ghost that came to me over several years that taught me about herbal healing, and basically told me that they didn't want to be extinct and they just wanted me to remember it, and it all turned out to be true. So what I perceived as a ghost, we could argue that that was maybe a higher being, or someone who felt like could be somebody, like you said, ancient, us coming back, or the future, us coming back and saying, we wanted to pick out a couple of people here, like if you have, say, you have 5 billion people, whatever. We want to take 1 billion of those people and teach them the things that they're going to forget if they keep going on this scale. And before they completely forget, we want to go back and teach them some of the fundamentals, because if not, all of those aspens you talked about are going to be gone. All of this is going to be gone. They're going to be extinct.
Yep. There's, even if you took, again, the story of Viracocha, a red-haired, red-beard, man-satchel-carrying dude, God, comes to South America and teaches people farming and higher learning, and then disappears. A dude with red hair and a red beard called Viracocha, and all over, again, we go back to the hero with 1,000 masks or faces, all the Joseph Campbell stuff, all the mysteries from all around the world, where you have constantly somebody showing up with a man satchel, teaching people how to do stuff that looks nothing like those people, and just disappearing. And it's not just people showing up, it's these manifestations. Why you, why there? There's one of the questions we don't have an answer to. Why did it come to you to teach you that? It was a necessity. So I'd like to think that it was for a positive reason. On the other hand, I sometimes think these ancient ancestors of ours that I think have survived thousands of years, they sit around, they go, do you remember the last time we taught everybody stuff? Those other 3 million murdered the other 3 billion. And it's like, good job, Bill. Don't interfere again.
Yep, that's possible too. That's possible too. It's wild how you can go around and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, like I said, sometimes I just try to stand back and get the 40,000 feet view, because if we get too close to something, we tend to miss the whole big picture. And I don't know that we're supposed to have all the answers. We keep having these puzzle pieces, and we think we have our puzzle piece and we jam it in there, we bang it in, and then we find out later on, we go back and look at it, it didn't fit there at all. And we don't even have the cover to the box, nor do we know how many pieces are in the puzzle. So it's that kind of thing. But I think everybody's piece deserves a chance to see where it fits in that big picture. And I think that's kind of what we're going through now with, I do feel like we're going through some kind of a conscious raising, whether you want to call it third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension stuff, and the consciousness, you hear that all the time, or you're in, you're still in the third dimension. You're still wandering. Well, that's the way my ghosts are. I have some that are stuck in their earthly with all that loaded down stuff. And I just know when I take it down to the simple things, man. I know when I dance barefoot in the grass and I laugh, I feel better. And, when I am angry in traffic and, I'm being forced to do something I don't want to do, I feel bad. And I feel bad when other people feel that way and I'm around it. You can collect their energy as well. So I just think that the way to move this forward is to, I just think everybody should be dancing barefoot singing. Maybe the world would be a better place.
Probably couldn't hurt, right?
Right. But, we are going through something, and, anybody out there that is going through something, the only thing I can tell you is to try to get somebody that understands, is willing to listen. I mean, it could be mental. I know a lot of people that are just popping pills like crazy, trying to, squash it. We have a saying, another elder saying that says, well, why don't you find out why your knee hurts instead of taking something to just shut it up? It's trying to tell you something. So maybe we need to go at the earth like that too, instead of just trying to, throw a bunch of stuff on top of it to shut it up. Maybe we need to listen to each other like we did tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sysco, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, I will be outside barefoot dancing and
yeah. Don't look for me there.
Yeah. So, Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast. We're going through a little technical hiatus right now, and I promise we'll be back up on all the podcatchers, Castbox and Podbean, all over iTunes, you name it. You can find me there. You can go to my website. There's lots and lots of episodes on there that talk about this very thing.
What's the website?
And it's journeythroughthegate.com, and you can find me there. You can find us on our Gatekeeper page on Facebook and Instagram if you want to go there and give me your stories. A lot of times they'll tell you, I don't know, but I know somebody who might. And we try to hook up people and help people that way, especially young people who have abilities and don't quite know what to do with them. Like I said, try to get somebody that'll listen and then go find somebody else and then run it through your heart and your filters and common sense and try to get on the right path instead of the wrong path. Then you got to back up, start all over again. So we try to do that. My book is We Are All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. And that's basically just to reach out to people who've had experiences and trying to, we don't jam it down your throat. I just tell you what happened, what I think, and, and maybe some of those will match up with yours and you can get some, a little light, Right now we need as much light as we can get, I think, and, high vibrational thoughts is what we're trying to put out there.
We do. We're need to manifest a better future for ourselves.
Yeah.
Sysco Murdoch from Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
It's been a delight. It's been an absolute wonderful conversation.
All right, and Jared, you're going to hang around for the outro, and we'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. That was Sysco Murdoch. Jared, what do you think? Do you learn anything?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's absolutely the best to talk to anyone with native culture background, and having the stories from her and her mom and her experiences and learning what she's learned and the connectivity. I mean, she's talking about doing stuff in the 70s. That means that she's dealing with generations that were going into the 1800s, which automatically start touching back in time to just an endless, mindful possibilities of how, these native populations, even here, were able to remember, I think, really ancient lost high technologies.
You got to really wonder, if there's anything to the whole evil and good aspect of energy and what's really going on out there. I mean, if there's true evil, if there's this true war against good and evil, or is it really just the ancient civilizations that are, flying around in UFO craft today, just trying to keep our consciousness down, and we just look at that as evil? It would turn our whole thinking of good and evil upside down, wouldn't it?
It does, and you have interviewed a lot of people, so I want to know what you think.
I think that there's something going on with the whole good versus evil battle. I really do.
You think it's intentional?
Yeah, I think that I think it's an actual battle that's going on. Yeah, I think we're kind of caught in the middle. I do.
Well, do you think it's what do we do with like post-flood, pre-flood societies? I mean, do you chalk it up to a post-floods religious interpretation, or is it possible that this is a struggle that is very ancient and goes way beyond and past any one religion's belief system?
Man, I mean, this is why we do the show, right? To try to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from or what really is going on, but I just have a feeling that there is a battle going on. I do. Yeah. I mean, where it's coming from, who knows? So.
Yeah, I do think that there is, I think that, again, to keep looking at these things when people out there listen to the shows, and I think just the takeaways from this, I think it's really important to keep really re-mentioning to people that it is super important to think that your personal experiences, something you may have never paid attention to before, the way your cat or your dog reacts to something, the way your plants seem to be, or things that you never thought about, like why are you drawn to certain kinds of walks, whether it's barefoot or running through the woods. What are you really connecting to? It's like, oh, you might have in the past said, oh, it's just fresh air, but you may have been hovering around maybe another idea or thought, or what may have been your imaginary friend when you were a kid. What was it? Was it one of these manifestations? Was it something what you would call paranormal or ghost-like, or is it, or in the sense of a genetic memory, is it someone else's deep past manifesting in you, or is it more of a projection of a conflict that you're having, maybe even with someone else that is also internally projecting it, and it's creating these external entity or what perceivable entities, when in fact they are part of this collective consciousness grid that we're just kind of banging on and making work every now and then, or just sorting out. It's super possible that the observations you make on a day-to-day basis from a show like this would be maybe more insightful for you by just keeping kind of any of this in mind.
Yeah. And you got to wonder about the good energy and evil energy. If it was just in energy, I mean, there would be evil plants and evil water, right? I mean, they all have energy, or an evil nuclear power plant, or an evil, electrical outlet or something. And I guess maybe that happens, but to think that evil is a human thing, I mean, that's I don't know. I don't know if I buy into that whole thing yet. I think evil is more than just human.
Well, what's interesting about the water consciousness research, I can't do it for listeners now, but I can think of a couple of videos that I could get to you offline that Actually, there were some experiments where some scientists, there was a specific example of a group of scientists all showing signs of being poisoned during a private closed door conference discussing creating a new poison. And they were only drinking water, but they were describing the effects of what they wanted the poison to do. And they all manifested symptoms of being poisoned. There's an example of survivors floating from a shipwreck where they were constantly thinking together as a group about how they all wanted to drink pure fresh water, and the salt water around them became fresh water. And sometimes it gets chalked up as a miracle, but water, Dr. Emoto's work, Masuru, there is the idea that, you have a bad thought. It doesn't matter the language, but a bad word, a bad thought, you apply it to water. The very famous rice experiment where you have 3 containers of rice, raw rice with water in each one. One container you ignore. The second container you tell it how much you appreciate it or love it or care for it. The third one you yell every kind of epitaph you can think of at it. And in 30 days, and this has been an experiment. It's called the conscious water or Dr. Emoto rice experiment. You can look it up on YouTube, and lots of people who aren't even into consciousness or collective consciousness or any intent or woo-woo or anything, they've tried it and they're like, holy crap, it works. And what happens is after 30 days, the one that you ignore blackens and molds. The one that you yell at, it usually looks worse than the one that you ignored, but the one that you were giving the love and affection and almost prayers towards, that one frequently turns into a pretty much sweetly fermented, almost edible constitution. And so our intents are measurable. Those energies are measurable. This is not a new thing. This is something that's been observed now. And for all these exciting possibilities, they're not things that you have to hear about. There are things that you can go and try yourself and apply. It sounds cliche, but having a positive attitude and caring for one another is a fundamental basis, I think, to eradicating that kind of evil, that whether it's something we manifest or created unconsciously, collectively, or whether it is an external entity, I don't really think it has any opportunity of success, because I don't think the foundational principles of I don't think I'm being optimistic in saying that the entire universe does not operate on an evil basis. It's just something that manifested, whether here or worse, from some other society, and it's their evil, like a ghost, like it's a galactic or universal ghost that floated our direction, and that evil that we're fighting isn't even ours. It's from some other societies, that it is an entity, but it's like an entity within a home that's really just an externally manifested, unresolved issue for an individual or a small group. It's that evil that you're identifying as a conscious body might not be. Again, there's lots of religions that we can call on. The problem is the oldest religion on earth talks about millions of years of history, and there is tens of thousands of years of history on this planet, and it's impossible for me to say that whatever it is because of some post-flood belief system. It's just too recent, and it may have labeled it or have had experienced it, but it's just we just have to be very careful that we respect cultures and societies that have been close to the earth all around the world, and it goes so far beyond our Roman upbringings.
Yeah. All right, Jared, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, don't shut it off yet. NotAliens.com. You can find me there. You can get a book there. I will sign it and send it to you. You can also sign up and become a member at NotAliens.com. We have exclusive content and interviews and research and what I'm planning, what I'm working on. That's also there. And of course, if you just want to spend a few dollars less and get it really fast, go to Amazon, and you can always buy the book on Amazon. It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History.
All right, and Jared Murphy's links will be in the description, along with Sysco Murdoch's and her Journey Through the Gate Paranormal podcast. The link will be down below. Remember, you can always find us on the internet, just go to www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Apple iTunes, and if you are listening to us on Apple iTunes, please go there and give us a rating and maybe give us a little review of how we're doing. It does help us in the podcast rankings there on Apple. I'm sure everybody knows how that works. It seems like we're reaching more people on Apple iTunes than we are any other platform. So I am asking you, if you are listening to us on Apple iTunes, to go give us a rating and a review. That'd be very helpful. You can find us on all of your normal podcast catchers as well, as long as Spreaker takes our podcast. They shoot it out to everywhere. So, until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe.